All right, this is week 4 of the My Type 2 series. As you saw in the video, we're looking at this way of understanding our personality types called the Enneagram. There are 9 types. Everybody is one of them. It's your dominant type. It never changes throughout your life. You might have a wing. If you're a type 8, you might have a 9 wing or a 7 wing. The wing's going to be adjacent to your dominant type, and it can be a little confusing because some of us take the test and we're not sure exactly what we are, but you can read through the descriptions, and hopefully these sermons help and you can learn about yourself. We want to talk about how understanding your unique makeup, who you are, will help you in a customized way to grow in your relationships and in your career and in your spiritual life. And we're focusing on spiritual formation. How can we grow closer to Christ? By knowing a little bit more about myself. And then if I know about others, then the way I love God is by loving other people, so I can love other people better if I understand them. So that's where we're coming from in this series. Today we're looking at types 7 and 8. We'll talk about strengths and weaknesses. If you're not a 7 or an 8, you know somebody who is. If you don't know somebody who is, then the truth is, in all of us is a little bit of each of these types. So we're going to learn about 7s and 8s today, and you might be a 2, but you're going to hear some things, you know what, I can identify with that. There are times in my life when I feel like that. And here's how I can grow. So there's something for everybody here today. So we're going to dive right in. You ready to go? All right, so let's talk about 7s, the enthusiasts. 7s are the busy, variety-seeking type, spontaneous, versatile, acquisitive. If I asked who's a 7 in here, it would be like an uproarious noise. Who's a 7? Right? So they're okay in a crowd. They're all right with that. 7s are extroverted, optimistic, versatile, spontaneous, playful, high-spirited, practical. Can I get an amen? 7s. They can also, because they're so optimistic and they're so open, some struggles of 7s is they may kind of misapply their talents. They may not know exactly how to focus because they can be good at a lot of things. And so it might be difficult for a 7 to focus on one thing. But at their best, they focus their talents on worthwhile goals, becoming appreciative, joyous, and satisfied people. The basic fear of a 7 is to be trapped and in pain, which is kind of a nightmare scenario for anybody, right? Right? But 7s just don't want to be held in. It'd be painful for a 7 to be reined in and not be able to live life out loud. Basic desire to be satisfied and content, to have their needs fulfilled. The basic struggle, and every type has a basic struggle, but here it is for 7s, is gluttony. Doesn't mean just food. It's the struggle to overindulge. The temptation to, if you're open to life, you're like, man, I want eyes wide open. Whatever life brings me, I'll take. Well, the temptation there, it's your greatest strength, can also be your greatest weakness, is that you would just take and take and take. Right? So the basic struggle for a 7. But 7s love life. They're curious about everything that catches their attention. They're optimistic. They live with a sense of adventure. They're bold. They live with chutzpah. You know what chutzpah is? A sense of boldness, courage. And along with 5s and 6s, 7s come from the thinking type. So they're idea people. 7s can brainstorm. They can see possibilities. They're verbally skilled. They can be widely read. They're able to synthesize information. They can experience a rush of ideas, like a burst of inspiration. Does that make sense to any 7s in here? Oh man, I've got this new idea. It's awesome. I'm excited about it. 7s can experience that rush of ideas. An Enneagram 7 with a 6 wing is the entertainer. And an Enneagram 7 with the 8 wing is the realist. And my hope is that you could listen to this sermon. You could go to EnneagramInstitute.com and you could learn more about your type. Or there's a book we're using by Richard Rohr called The Enneagram, A Christian Perspective. And you could pick up those resources and understand a little bit more what these things mean. So let's take a look quickly at a healthy, average, and unhealthy 7, and then we'll stop and unpack it a little bit. A healthy 7 assimilates experiences in depth, making them deeply grateful and appreciative for what they have. They become awed by the simple wonders of life, joyous and ecstatic intimations of spiritual reality, of the boundless goodness of life. That's a healthy 7. An average 7, because we're looking to grow here, as restlessness increases, want to have more options and choices available to them, become adventurous and worldly wise, but less focused, constantly seeking new things and experiences. The sophisticate, connoisseur, the consumer. Money, variety, and keeping up with the latest trends are important to it, like an average health 7. An unhealthy 7, obviously what we don't want to be. They're desperate to quell their anxieties so they can be impulsive and infantile. Don't know when to stop. Addictions and excess take their toll. Not the most flattering, but none of them is. part. I guess don't turn your head to the right, 47 degrees. Okay. Famous sevens, to give you an idea more about who sevens are. The Dalai Lama, Galileo, Mozart, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, Amelia Earhart, Timothy Leary, John F. Kennedy, Joe Biden, Sarah Palin, Malcolm Forbes, Richard Branson, Ted Turner, Susie Orman, Leonard Bernstein, Chuck Berry, Elton John, Mick Jagger, Fergie, Miley Cyrus. Congrats on that one right there. No, we love Miley Cyrus. Poor Miley. Britney Spears, Katy Perry, Russell Brand, Sacha Baron Cohen, Spielberg, Fred Astaire, Cary Grant, John Belushi, Joan Rivers, Bette Midler, Goldie Hawn, George Clooney, Brad Pitt, Robin Williams, Jim Carrey. You get an idea, right? People full of life. Mike Myers, Bruce Willis, Robert Downey Jr., James Franco, Leonardo DiCaprio, Charlie Sheen, Cameron Diaz, Larry King, Simon Cowell from American Idol. So you get an idea of like the famous sevens that we know about. Sevens want to maintain their freedom and their happiness, their independence. They want to avoid missing out on experiences. One of my best friends in college, actually my college roommate, is a seven. Some of my best friends have been sevens. He's a 7 with an 8 wing. His name is Mike, but he goes by the name Mookie. I've talked about him a little bit before, I think, but he's this bear of a dude. He's 6'6", like 250 pounds of like teddy bear. Who's just, imagine a person like this. When he walks into a room, he's there, right? And so he's just full of life. He's glue socially. He brings people together. Some friends of mine had a wedding a couple of years ago, and he went to the wedding reception, and he doesn't try to do this. This is just who he is. So I'm like finishing up dinner at the reception, and all of a sudden I see like this hulking figure with his tie tied around his head, and he's leading this dancing train of people of all ages through the reception hall. I mean, just like party down, like they're 85-year-old guys like partying with Mookie, because he's just so full of life, and he's not even trying to do that, but he just takes over the party automatically because he just lives out loud. That's who he is. When he comes to town, groups of people come together who normally don't hang out with each other because he just knows all these people, and he just brings them together, and he's just so full of life, and he's a good dude. Love him to death. An Enneagram 7. So here's a short video, about a minute long, about Enneagram 7s. Yeah, so we're talking about relationships, career, and spiritual life, so let's take a look at a 7 for a moment. 7s are exciting, romantic people. They want to love deeply. They want to experience life in all of its fullness, and that includes a relationship. They see life as an adventure, and so if your partner is a 7, you're going to have to be down for that. You have to be ready for that. You're going to have to be ready to live life to the full. So for the partner of a 7, it's a good challenge, even if it's kind of out of your comfort zone. Sometimes you just go for it, and be spontaneous and just see what life has to offer. And 7s want to have a deep emotional connection to somebody. So if the relationship could sometimes feel shallow to a 7, if they're looking for this deep, exciting, romantic, adventurous connection with people. And so the weakness of that is that a relationship could start to feel a little, boring is a strong word, but if you have this desire for adventure and you're not feeling that way, well, sometimes a 7 could feel like, man, I just wish there's a little more excitement, and so a partner might feel that pressure, even if it's unstated, if it's unspoken, a partner might feel that pressure, and like any relationship, making a relationship work is a negotiation. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? People who've been around for a while, it's what it is. It's sitting around, it's talking, it's being open about how you feel. It's saying, well, it's not blaming, but it's like when I feel like this, I'm not blaming you, I feel like this, so here, blah, there it is. And then the other person can say, I feel like this. And then you can just kind of get in there and figure it out in a loving way as a team. But 7 relationships, they want something to be exciting and romantic and adventurous. And there's a lot more information that you could find online or in Enneagram books about this. Okay, careers. 7s excel in the people business. They're creative people. They create excitement and morale. They're people magnets. And so that's the kind of business they want to be in. Some possible careers. Small business owner. They could spin several plates in the air at the same time. A 7 could be involved in 3 different businesses. Tour, travel, adventure guide, travel writer, artist, musician, food critic, comedian, park ranger, professional athlete, dancer, photographer. I love my list. I don't think it's up there. Professional gambler was on my list. I don't think that's a good choice necessarily. DJ, nightclub owner. It's awesome. I know 2 sevens who are very successful pastors. So you just have people they're good at a variety of things. They can make a lot of things work. They're quick, they have agile minds, and they're fast learners. All right, so let's talk about spiritual life. 7s, because of their openness to adventure, can boldly follow God's calling. That third song, Spirit Lead Me, right? To a lot of people, we're afraid of stepping out in faith. We're afraid of pain of any kind. We're afraid of something that's different. We're just kind of, if we're honest, sometimes just kind of locked in this comfort, this addiction to comfort as American Christians. But that's not what it means to follow Jesus. It's probably the most challenging thing to a Christian in America. That's just not what it means to follow Jesus. Blessings don't always mean money. They don't always mean a raise. Sometimes God calls you to do things that are uncomfortable, to sacrifice, to give, to live for the benefit of other people. 7s, because of their makeup, might actually have an easier time stepping out in faith and doing that. So you know what? Go for it. Let's jump out the plane. We got the parachute on. Just jump out and go for it. Let's just see where the Spirit leads us here. So 7s can boldly follow God's calling, and then they can help us to boldly follow that calling as well. The invitation Richard Rohr talks about in the Enneagram, A Christian Perspective, the invitation from God to a 7 is to one of realism and cooperation with God. A 7 can kind of have their head in the clouds, like they want this romantic adventure in life and excitement and new things all the time, but that's not always the way life is. Sometimes it's just like staying committed through the long haul and like going through the ruts of life, and sometimes things aren't that exciting. And so the invitation to a 7 could be to cooperate with God wherever you are. If you feel stuck, if you're a 7 and you're frustrated, like things just aren't moving as fast as I want them to, it may be that the invitation to spiritual growth right now from God, from God's Spirit, it may be where God's Spirit is leading you right now, is to be okay being right here. Okay, I'm going to go through this. I'm going to learn what I can. I'm going to let this make me be a more open-hearted person, a more loving person. And it may be that that's God's invitation to you right now. The fruit of the Spirit, the result of God's Spirit in your life, Richard Rohr says for 7, is sober joy, not implying the alternative, I think, but like there's a superficial happiness, this excitement that we can run toward. And perhaps God is saying to a 7, you know what, there's a deeper kind of happiness, there's a deeper kind of peace and fulfillment. It's joy. No matter what you're going through, you can still have this sense of joy that everything's okay. So a great Bible verse for a 7, for spiritual formation, this would be great to meditate on, is James 1:2-4. James says, consider it pure joy, brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds, difficult times, trials, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, lacking nothing. So when things aren't exciting and you kind of feel stuck and the adventure is just not quite there, you know what? You can actually consider it joy when you're going through this difficult time, because God's actually working in that in really exciting ways, even if it doesn't feel like it. And you can persevere and be stronger through whatever it is you're facing. Does that just apply to a 7? Or is that a lesson for everybody? Consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds. All right, Rob Bell is a famous pastor, and he's a 7. I've heard him say that. And Rob's speaking in Phoenix here in a couple of weeks in a tour called Everything is Spiritual. A couple of years ago, Rob Bell authored a book called What We Talk About When We Talk About God. It was a blockbuster. Oprah got a hold of it, went stratospheric. And so now he's this celebrity who travels and speaks. And in this book, What We Talk About When We Talk About God, he writes that God is always calling us forward as believers. That's a difficult thing for a lot of Christians right now, especially in the Southeast Valley, who think they're in a culture war and they just want to hunker down and fight. Rob says, perhaps God is always calling us forward, understanding in new ways. And I'm going to show you a clip of an interview between Rob Bell and a guy named Brandon Robertson. We've never announced this yet, but Brandon Robertson, the guy interviewing Rob Bell, is going to be our guest speaker here on August 30th, and in a part of a sermon series called Share Your Story. It's going to be really exciting. We're going to gear up for the fall again. It's going to be a good fall in One Church. But Brandon is interviewing Rob Bell about what it means that God is calling us forward. So here's a 7 talking about what growth can look like, and this can apply to 7s and 8s and any other type. So let's check it out. It's about 4 minutes long, so let's check it out. Nice, huh? Is that cool? Inspiring? It's a 7 talking about what it means to be spiritually formed and to grow. All right, 8s are the powerful, dominating type, self-confident, decisive, willful, confrontational. They want to be self-reliant to prove their strength and to be important in the world. They're assertive. An 8's basic fear is of being harmed or controlled by others. The basic desire is to protect themselves from being controlled. The basic struggle is lust, which is the desire for more. So we're talking about 8s now. 7's enthusiast, 8's the challenger. An Enneagram 8 with a 7 wing is the maverick. An 8 with a 9 wing is the bear. How's that? I'm a bear, right? Like that's my type. So you get an idea a little bit of what an 8 looks like. A healthy 8 becomes self-restrained and magnanimous, merciful and forbearing, mastering the self through their self-surrender to a higher authority, courageous, willing to put themselves in serious jeopardy to achieve their vision and have a lasting influence. They may achieve true heroism and historical greatness. It's a pretty great calling if you're an 8. An average 8, they believe in self-sufficiency, financial independence, having enough resources are important. They're enterprising, pragmatic, rugged individualists, John Wayne types, wheeler dealers, risk-taking, hard-working, denying their own emotional needs. An unhealthy 8, what we want to move away from, defying any attempt to control them, become completely ruthless, dictatorial, might makes right. So a lot of times people have an experience of an 8, and if it's an experience of an unhealthy 8, then they just don't like 8s. And they don't like anybody like this, because 8s can be abrasive. These are strong people who know what they want in life, and they're going to get it. So you know people like this, right? And so the growth pattern for any type, 7, 8, anybody, is what Rob Bell's talking about. Expanding beyond the self. That my life is about more than just me and the stuff I want. Doesn't matter if you could be a 1. It's still what life is about, expanding and growing, just like our universe. Famous 8s, Franklin Roosevelt, Churchill, Oscar Schindler, Fidel Castro, Martin Luther King Jr., Lyndon Johnson, Gorbachev, Golda Meir, Gandhi, John McCain, Picasso, Hemingway, Serena Williams, James Brown, Aretha Franklin, Keith Richards, Queen Latifah, Courtney Love, Jack Black, Chrissy Hynde, Sinatra, Bogart, Lauren Bacall, Betty Davis, Mae West, Sean Connery. I'm going to resist the temptation to do Will Ferrell, Sean Connery impressions on SNL right now, if you're familiar with that. Paul Newman, Clint Eastwood, Tommy Lee Jones, Jack Nicholson, Susan Sarandon, Russell Crowe, Harvey Keitel, Matt Damon, Alec Baldwin, Roseanne Barr, Barbara Walters, Rosie O'Donnell, Dr. Phil. You get the idea, right? 8s make things happen. They're strong personalities. When an 8 walks into the room, you know it. You don't have to ask. You know the person's an 8. So they want to exceed their own accomplishments. 8s are driven to do great things. They're persuasive. They're charismatic. They're confident. 8s can start a company. They can run a household. They can wage war. They can make peace. They're the ultimate directors of society. The week after Easter, we welcomed a guest speaker named Doug Padgett. Remember Doug? Doug's an 8. And I've seen Doug say, you know what? Let's go change the world. And he's totally serious. And so right after he was here, he was on Fox News for an interview about his book. And then he'll be off. He's in Boston right now, setting up a conference for about 250 church leaders nationally. And he's starting this whole nationwide movement called Convergence, which is Catholics and mainline Protestants and non-denom forward-thinking Christians like us, all over the country, people coming together who want to think in ways that are expansive, like Rob Bell said, expansive about our faith, and transcend some of these culture wars and these political entanglements that so many Christians are getting themselves into right now. Do you know what I mean? To quote Rob, right? So Doug is this guy who's an 8. He's a powerful force, but he's somebody who cares for people. And that's what it looks like to be a healthy 8. Here's a short video about 8s. Yeah, so in relationships, the call is to show mercy and resist domineering for an 8. Healthy 8s have compassion for other people. They put themselves in other people's shoes with empathy. They say, I'm going to treat other people the way I want to be treated, which is the core teaching of Jesus. 8s show compassion and mercy to the people they're in relationships with. If you're the partner of an 8, you need to know that 8s need direct feedback. You can't really beat around the bush with an 8. Like, you just need to say, you know what, like, this is what I need in the relationship. This is okay, here's how I perceive you, here's how I feel, this is what I need in the relationship. Like, make sure 8s hear you. Yeah, they can take it. They're big boys and big girls. 8s need direct feedback. And a lot of times there are relationship problems in the life of an 8 because the other partner just kind of shrinks back and becomes mousy. And an 8 doesn't even notice because an 8's busy. And so you kind of do it to yourself if you shrink back and don't share who you are and what you need in the relationship. So 8s need direct feedback, and 8s respect those who respect themselves. 8s need a partner who's willing to be fully who they are and to be honest with the 8. And again, you could find resources online or in various growth books to learn more about that. In careers, 8s have no problem in their careers. They can accomplish as much or more as any other type. Some possible careers: event coordinator, financial advisor, career counselor, organizational psychologist, CEO, CFO, marketing manager, director of sales, owner, manager, politician, healthcare administrator, market strategist, advertising executive. I just went ahead and tacked on president of the universe just to cover it all, right? 8s are just capable people. They know what they're doing. They can make it happen, right? Wonderful people who can make this world better if they want to. So, which brings us to spiritual growth, spiritual formation. For 8s, the opportunity in spiritual formation is to take time to reflect. 8s are busy. They know where they're going, and they're going. And so the challenge is to take time to reflect about who I am and what's really important. How do I treat others? What are my values? Once I am really successful, which I'm on my way to being, how do I define success? Am I really going to be proud of it when I get to that point? What really matters in life? The invitation is to mercy, to show mercy, which means to basically be nicer to people than they deserve, which is hard it's hard for all of us. It's not just 8s, right? It's hard for all of us. But it's an invitation to mercy. A mature 8 is generous, a strong leader, protective. They use their power not to harm, but to protect. That's a mature 8 who uses their power within the bounds of mercy. Let's mercy inform their power. A great verse for spiritual formation for 8s is Micah 6, verse 8. What a phenomenal quote from a Hebrew prophet. God has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. What does God want? What's religion all about? What does it mean to be a good person? What is success? Act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. If an 8 would make this a life verse, if every 8 would make this a life verse, this world would be radically transformed. We would have a much better planet than we have if 8s in all their power could work for this. And many do, but we need more. And 8s, you have the ability to do that. Last Wednesday night, when traditional churches have their Wednesday night Bible study meetings, a young man walked into a Bible study at the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina. He sat through the Bible study for almost an hour. Let that sink in for a moment. Being treated nicely by these people who welcomed him in. At the end of the Bible study, he stood up, he pulled out a gun, and aimed it at an 87-year-old Susie Jackson. Her 26-year-old nephew, Tywanza Sanders, asked him why he wanted to shoot people in a church. The shooter said, "I have to do it. You rape our women, and you're taking over our country, and you have to go." This Caucasian young man says to the African-American people in the room. Then Sanders dove in front of the gun and was the first person shot. The shooter then yelled racial slurs as he shot 8 more people. He also reportedly said, "Y'all want something to pray about? I'll give you something to pray about." He spared one woman, telling her that she could report what happened because he planned to kill himself, which he didn't do. And here are the victims' photos. These 9 people. and I saw their careers in an article and their educations, and I posted them on my Facebook page yesterday. These are teachers, coaches, musicians, counselors. The pastor was a state senator. He was a doctoral student at a Methodist seminary. These are people who gave back to their community, were deeply involved in their community. Upstanding, great people. He shot them all multiple times, reloading his handgun 5 times. All victims were black, as you see, 6 women, 3 men. It was the deadliest shooting in a house of worship since 1991 when a man killed 9 Buddhists in Phoenix. The shooter wore racist patches on his jacket and had a Confederacy license plate on the front of his car. He created a personal website with photos of himself posing with the Confederate flag, wax figures of slaves, and a handgun, as well as photos of himself burning an American flag. The website also contains an explanation in which he writes, "I have no choice. I am not in the position to alone go into the ghetto and fight. I chose Charleston because it's the most historic city in my state, and at one time had the highest ratio of blacks to whites in the country. We have no skinheads," he laments. No real KKK here. No one doing anything but talking on the internet. Well, someone has to have the bravery to take it to the real world, and I guess that has to be me. And so he said he wanted a race war. So he went in and shot people who didn't have any guns. He didn't shoot people who shoot back. He went in and shot 6 women and 3 men who had no guns. How have the families responded to their loved ones being shot by this young man? Taken from them in a ludicrous, senseless, hate-filled act of domestic terrorism in this country. There's a CNN.com article entitled "Charleston Shooter Hears Victims' Families Say, 'I forgive you.'" Wearing a striped inmate jumpsuit, the 21-year-old appeared Friday afternoon by video feed at a bond hearing in Charleston, South Carolina. He stood motionless while listening to the anguished words of relatives of victims he gunned down Wednesday night at a Bible study at the historic Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church. "I will never be able to hold her again, but I forgive you," the daughter of Ethel Lance said. "And have mercy on your soul. You hurt me. You hurt a lot of people. But God forgives you, and I forgive you." Felicia Sanders, mother of victim Tywanza Sanders and a survivor of the church shooting herself, she lived, said that every fiber in my body hurts, and I will never be the same. As we said in the Bible study, we enjoyed you, but may God have mercy on you. So Martin Luther King Jr. was an Enneagram 8, and in a piece he wrote entitled "Stride Toward Freedom, the Montgomery Story," chapter 11, "Where do we go from here?" He wrote, "Human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Even a superficial look at history reveals that no social advance rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. Every step towards the goal of justice requires sacrifice, suffering, and struggle. The tireless exertions," this is 8 talk right here. This is change the world talk. "The tireless exertions and passionate concern of dedicated individuals. Without persistent effort, time itself becomes an ally of the insurgent and primitive forces of irrational emotionalism and social destruction. This is no time for apathy or complacency. This is a time for vigorous and positive action." Does anybody want to say amen to MLK's quote? That's what an 8 can do. And of course, you see the work of an 8, Martin Luther King Jr. and the millions who have followed that and his work over the decades. And we're in this place as a country where the first African-American news anchor, Lester Holt, reported on the first African-American president's remarks about a church shooting at an African-American church. And so we've made progress in important ways, but we have oh so painfully far to go. That's where we find ourselves. And regardless of our types, the invitation, God's invitation, is for us to expand and grow and transcend our own selfish interests, our own prejudices, our own fears and paranoia and xenophobia, and finally, oh my word, finally get to a place where we can live like that and we don't see these senseless, hate-filled tragedies the way that we have been. Amen? Oh my word. And we're called by, God's people who want to follow Jesus Christ, to think about that. I'm a white guy. I've had privilege, a private college education. So much was given to me. And what is my responsibility? To work on Jesus' side here. The Jesus I claim to follow. What's my responsibility? To expand and grow and get better.